The aftermath of the mission left Earth in a state of cautious optimism. The destruction of the Krylosian Central Command Hub had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, both literally and figuratively. News of the Resistance's success spread far, beyond Earth's borders, reaching neutral factions, rogue colonies, and even some of the Empire's own territories. For the first time in decades, humanity wasn't seen as weak or isolated. It was viewed as a force to be reckoned with. But victory didn't mean peace. The Krylosian Empire was wounded, not defeated. Chancellor Varnock, humiliated by the loss of his prized stronghold, vowed revenge. His speeches grew angrier, his rhetoric more aggressive. "Earth has declared war," he proclaimed during a public address. "And we will answer with fire." Jacob Hayes knew better than to believe the Resistance's work was done. He and his team had struck a significant blow, but the Krylosians wouldn't stay silent for long. If anything, their retaliation would be swift and brutal. The question was, how ready was Earth? Back at the Global Institute of History, Jacob resumed teaching, but his lectures took on a new tone. Instead of focusing solely on the past, he began discussing the future. "History repeats itself," he told his students one afternoon, "but only if we let it. We have a chance right now to shape what comes next, to build something stronger, smarter, better." His words resonated with many, especially younger generations eager to prove themselves. Across the planet, people rallied around the idea of unity. Factories once used for mundane purposes were repurposed to produce advanced technology. Schools introduced courses on interstellar diplomacy and defense strategies. Even artists contributed, creating works that celebrated resilience and courage. Claire Mitchell returned to her research, though her focus shifted. Rather than studying quantum communications purely for theoretical purposes, she worked on developing tools that could protect Earth from future threats. Her lab became a hub of innovation, attracting brilliant minds from all over the world. Together, they pushed the boundaries of science, turning ideas into reality faster than anyone thought possible. Meanwhile, Ethan Cole spent most of his time testing and modifying ships. The Phoenix Dawn had proven its worth, but Ethan insisted it needed upgrades. "If we're going to keep flying into danger," he said, tightening a bolt on the ship's hull, "we need to make sure this thing can handle it." Maria Lopez stayed by his side, working tirelessly to improve the ship's systems. She added extra layers of shielding, upgraded the engines, and installed experimental weapons designed to disable enemy vessels without causing unnecessary destruction. "We're not here to start wars," she reminded Ethan when he suggested adding more firepower. "We're here to end them." Samantha Reed continued her role as strategist, analyzing intelligence reports and coordinating with allies across the galaxy. Through Lila Monroe's network, she established communication channels with factions who shared Earth's desire for stability. These connections proved invaluable, providing early warnings about Krylosian movements and offering support when needed. As for Elias Drake, he struggled to find his place in this new world. Though accepted by the team, he still felt like an outsider. Nights were the hardest. Alone in his quarters aboard the Phoenix Dawn, he replayed every decision he'd ever made, questioning whether he truly deserved a second chance. During the day, however, he threw himself into training volunteers, teaching them tactics he'd learned during his years in the Krylosian military. Slowly but surely, he began to earn trust, not just from others, but from himself. Despite these efforts, tensions remained high. Reports of Krylosian activity near Earth's borders became more frequent. Patrols detected scout ships probing the Veil, searching for weaknesses. It was clear another attack was coming. One evening, Jacob gathered the team in the briefing room aboard the Phoenix Dawn. Maps and holographic projections covered the walls, displaying potential invasion routes and strategic points of interest. "They're planning something big," he said, pointing to a cluster of red markers. "If we don't act soon, they'll..." Hit us where it hurts. What do you suggest? Maria asked, crossing her arms. We strike first, Jacob replied firmly. Not recklessly, but smartly. Hit key targets before they can mobilize fully. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're talking about preemptive strikes? That's risky. It's necessary, Samantha interjected. If we wait too long, we lose the advantage. Right now, they're scattered, recovering from our last attack. This is our window. Claire nodded in agreement. And if we combine our resources with those of our allies, we might stand a chance. The team debated the plan late into the night, weighing risks against rewards. By morning, they had reached a consensus. They would launch a series of coordinated assaults on critical Krylosian outposts, crippling their ability to launch a full-scale invasion. Timing would be crucial. They needed to act quickly and decisively. Preparations moved at a feverish pace. Volunteers poured in from all corners of Earth, eager to join the fight. Ships of all shapes and sizes were retrofitted for combat, forming a makeshift fleet under Jacob's command. Allies from neutral factions arrived with supplies and reinforcements, pledging their support. Among them was Lila Monroe, who brought not only weapons, but also vital information. I've got intel on one of their supply depots, she said, handing Samantha a data chip. Take it out and you cut off their resources for weeks. Perfect, Samantha said with a grin. Let's add that to the list. As the fleet assembled near the Vale, Jacob addressed the crews via a secure channel. This isn't just about protecting Earth, he said, his voice steady yet passionate. It's about proving that we won't back down. We've opened our doors. And now we're stepping out into the galaxy. Let's show them what we're made of. The operation launched under cover of darkness. Divided into small strike teams, the fleet slipped past Krylosian patrols, targeting designated locations with precision. Explosions lit up distant moons and asteroids as outposts fell one by one. Resistance fighters moved swiftly, planting charges, and disabling systems before vanishing into the void. At the heart of the chaos was the Phoenix Dawn. Led by Jacob, the team infiltrated a heavily fortified space station responsible for coordinating Krylosian logistics. The mission was dangerous, but they executed it flawlessly. Claire hacked into the station's mainframe, downloading classified files while uploading a virus that scrambled communications across the Empire. Elias provided cover, his combat skills keeping enemies at bay long enough for the others to complete their tasks. When the dust settled, the results spoke for themselves. The Krylosian Empire was reeling, its infrastructure crippled and morale shattered. Chancellor Varnock issued desperate orders, trying to rally his forces, but dissent within his ranks grew louder. Some questioned his leadership, accusing him of arrogance and poor judgment. Others openly defied him, abandoning posts or defecting entirely. On Earth, celebrations erupted once again. People cheered in the streets, waving flags and singing songs of triumph. But Jacob knew better than to let pride cloud his judgment. This isn't the end, he warned during a press conference. It's just the beginning. We've shown we can stand together, but the real challenge lies ahead. True to his words, the galaxy remained unpredictable. While the Krylosians licked their wounds, other powers watched Earth closely, gauging whether humanity was friend or foe. Diplomacy became as important as defense, requiring careful navigation of alliances and rivalries. Through it all, Jacob and his team stood firm, ready to face whatever came next. They had opened Earth's doors, stepping boldly into a universe filled with uncertainty. But they weren't afraid. Together, they had proven that isolation wasn't strength, it was stagnation. And now Earth was alive, vibrant, and unafraid to reach for the stars. The Phoenix Dawn slipped through the darkness of space, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to enemy sensors. Inside the ship, the air was tense, thick with anticipation. Jacob sat in the co-pilot seat beside Ethan, his eyes glued. to the view screen as the Krylosian stronghold loomed larger with each passing second. It was a massive structure, bristling with weapons and surrounded by a fleet of warships. The thought of infiltrating such a fortress felt impossible, but they had no choice. This was their only chance to stop the Empire. "Hold steady," Ethan muttered, his hands gripping the controls tightly. "We're almost in range." Maria monitored the ship's systems from the back, her fingers flying over the console as she adjusted the cloaking field. "If we maintain this trajectory, we'll slip past their patrols without being detected," she said, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. Samantha leaned forward, studying the layout of the stronghold on a holographic map. "Once we land, we'll have 10 minutes, tops, to plant the explosives. Any longer, and we risk getting caught." Claire nodded silently, clutching a small device in her hand. She had insisted on coming along, determined to play her part in stopping the Krylosians. Her expertise in quantum communications would be crucial for disabling the Central Command Hub security systems. Though still recovering from her ordeal, she refused to stay behind. Elias stood near the rear of the ship, staring out the viewport at the approaching fortress. He felt like an outsider among the team, even though they had accepted him. His betrayal of the Krylosian Empire weighed heavily on him, but he knew redemption wasn't something that could be earned easily. All he could do was focus on the mission and hope his actions would speak louder than his past mistakes. As the Phoenix Dawn entered the stronghold's docking bay, everyone held their breath. The ship settled onto the platform with a soft thud, its engines powering down. For a moment, there was silence. Then Ethan broke it. "Let's move. And remember, stick to the plan." The team disembarked quickly, moving in practiced formation through the dimly lit corridors. Their footsteps echoed softly against the metallic walls as they made their way deeper into the facility. So far, so good. The cloaking device had done its job. None of the guards seemed to notice their presence. Their first objective was to disable the surveillance system. Claire took the lead, connecting her device to a nearby terminal. Her fingers danced across the screen as lines of code scrolled past. "I'm in," she whispered after a few tense moments. "Security cameras are offline. We've got about 5 minutes before they reboot." "That's more than enough time," Jacob said, motioning for the others to follow him. They moved swiftly, heading toward the heart of the stronghold where the Central Command Hub was located. The closer they got, the more heavily guarded the area became. Armed soldiers patrolled the halls, their weapons at the ready. Samantha signaled for the group to take cover behind a stack of crates. "We can't go around them," she murmured. "We need another way." Ethan grinned, pulling a small gadget from his pocket. "Leave it to me." He tossed the device, a modified EMP grenade, into the corridor. A burst of energy surged outward, temporarily disabling the soldiers' weapons and leaving them disoriented. "Now!" Jacob shouted, leading the charge forward. They sprinted past the stunned guards, pushing deeper into the stronghold. Every step brought them closer to their goal and closer to danger. Finally, they reached the Central Command Hub. It was a cavernous room filled with glowing panels and humming machinery. At its center stood a towering console, the nerve center of the entire operation. Samantha wasted no time, pulling out the explosives they had brought. "Set these charges here, here, and here," she instructed, pointing to key points in the system. "It'll trigger a chain reaction, taking out the whole facility." While Samantha and Maria worked on planting the explosives, Claire focused on accessing the hub's mainframe. Her task was twofold: retrieve any remaining data about the Krylosians' experiments and upload a virus that would corrupt their systems permanently. As her device connected to the console, alarms suddenly blared throughout the room. "They know we're here!" Elias yelled, drawing his weapon. Sure enough, squads of Krylosian soldiers poured into the chamber, opening fire immediately. "Keep them busy," Jacob ordered, firing back while Maria finished setting the last charge. Bullets ricocheted off the walls as the team fought desperately to hold their ground. Elias proved surprisingly skilled in combat, using his knowledge of Krylosian tactics to anticipate their movements and counterattack effectively. "We're done," Samantha shouted over the chaos. "Let's get out of here!" But escaping wouldn't be easy. Reinforcements were closing in from all sides, cutting off their exit routes. Jacob glanced at Ethan, who was already thinking ahead. "There's a maintenance tunnel on the lower level," Ethan said quickly. "If we can reach it, we might have a shot." Without hesitation, the team turned and ran, dodging enemy fire as they retreated. The path to the tunnel was treacherous, lined with traps and obstacles designed to slow intruders. But Maria's engineering skills came in handy once again, allowing them to bypass locked doors and deactivate automated defenses. When they finally reached the maintenance tunnel, Jacob paused for a moment, looking back at the stronghold. Explosions began to ripple through the structure, sending shock waves reverberating through the walls. The charges had detonated just as planned. The central command hub and the Krylosians' experiments were gone. "Move!" Elias urged, pushing Jacob forward. They didn't have much time. The collapsing facility would soon become unstable, and they needed to put as much distance between themselves and the destruction as possible. Back aboard the Phoenix Dawn, the team barely had time to catch their breath before lifting off. The stronghold exploded behind them in a brilliant flash of light, sending debris hurtling into space. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply watched as the remains of the fortress drifted apart, swallowed by the void. "We did it," Claire said, finally breaking the silence. Her voice was shaky but filled with relief. "We actually did it." Jacob pulled her close, holding her tightly. "Yeah, we did." As the Phoenix Dawn sped away from the wreckage, Elias stared out the viewport, his expression unreadable. He had played a role in bringing down the empire he once served, but he couldn't shake the weight of everything that had happened. Still, he felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, he believed change was possible. On Earth, news of the Resistance's success spread quickly. People celebrated in the streets, hailing Jacob and his team as heroes. The breach of the Veil had forced humanity to confront its fears, but it had also revealed their strength. The United Earth Council, facing mounting pressure from the public, agreed to lift its ban on interstellar contact. Earth would no longer isolate itself. It would engage with the galaxy, cautiously but confidently. In the weeks that followed, alliances were forged with neutral factions and rogue colonies. Trade routes reopened, and diplomatic efforts resumed. Humanity stepped back onto the galactic stage, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For Jacob and Claire, life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but they knew things would never truly be the same. They had seen the best and worst of what the galaxy had to offer, and they were determined to make a difference. Together with their friends, they continued working to ensure Earth's place in the cosmos was secure. As for Elias Drake, he found a new purpose among the Resistance. Though he still carried the scars of his past, he embraced the opportunity to start over. In helping Earth reclaim its voice, he had begun to heal himself. The veil may have fallen, but Earth's doors remained open, not just to the stars, but to the future. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together. The Phoenix Dawn raced back toward Earth, its engines straining under the weight of their hurried escape. Inside the ship, the team was quiet, each person lost in their own thoughts. Claire sat near Jacob, her hands trembling as she clutched a blanket someone had given her. She hadn't spoken much since they rescued her, but her silence spoke volumes. The ordeal had taken its toll on her, both physically and emotionally. Jacob stayed close to her, holding her hand tightly. He wanted to say something comforting, but words felt useless. Instead, he focused on keeping watch, scanning the view screen for any sign of pursuit. So far, they were clear. The Krylosians hadn't followed them past the veil. At least not yet. Samantha stood nearby, reviewing the data they had retrieved from the Eclipse blade. It wasn't much, just fragments of files and incomplete transmissions, but it was enough to give them clues about the Empire's plans. Maria sat at the sea. Controls, making minor adjustments to keep the ship steady. Ethan, ever restless, paced around the cabin, occasionally glancing out the viewport. "We're almost home," Maria said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a mix of relief and anxiety. "Home?" Ethan muttered under his breath. "If you call that mess a home." He wasn't wrong. Earth had changed during their absence, or maybe it was just catching up with itself. News of the rescue mission spread quickly, thanks to the Council's inability to contain information. People were angry, not just at the Krylosians, but at the Council too. Protests grew louder, demanding action against the Empire. Some called for revenge. Others urged caution. The divisions ran deep, threatening to tear society apart. When the Phoenix Dawn landed, they were greeted by a mix of cheers and jeers. Crowds had gathered outside the spaceport, holding signs and chanting slogans. Reporters shoved microphones in their faces, firing off questions faster than anyone could answer. Jacob shielded Claire from the chaos, guiding her through the throng of people. Samantha and the others followed closely behind, trying to avoid attention. Inside the council chambers, tempers flared. Council members argued over what to do next. Some wanted to retaliate immediately, launching a full-scale attack on the Krylosian Empire. Others insisted on diplomacy, urging patience despite the mounting pressure from the public. In the middle of it all stood Jacob, addressing the council with a determination that surprised even himself. "The Krylosians didn't just breach the veil, they violated everything we stand for," he said, his voice steady. "But this isn't about revenge. This is about survival. If we don't act now, they'll come back stronger. And next time, we might not be so lucky." His words struck a chord with some members, but others remained unconvinced. One counselor leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Hayes? A war? Because that's what you're talking about." "No," Jacob replied firmly. "I'm talking about preparing for one. We need to strengthen our defenses, build alliances with neutral factions, and show the galaxy that Earth isn't afraid to fight back." It was a bold statement, one that earned both applause and criticism. But Jacob didn't care. For the first time in years, people were listening. The breach of the veil had forced humanity to confront its fears and its potential. Meanwhile, Elias Drake faced consequences of his own. After letting Jacob's team escape, he was arrested and brought before Chancellor Varnock. The Chancellor's expression was unreadable as he listened to the charges against Elias. Betrayal, cowardice, treason. Each word hit like a hammer blow, but Elias refused to look away. "You disappoint me, Captain," Varnock said coldly. "I trusted you, and this is how you repay me?" "I did what I thought was right," Elias answered, his voice firm despite the knot in his stomach. "We've gone too far, Chancellor. Attacking Earth won't solve anything. It'll only make things worse." Varnock's eyes narrowed. "You think I care about morality, about right and wrong? This is about power, Drake. Something you clearly lack." For a moment, Elias thought he was going to be executed on the spot, but instead, Varnock dismissed him with a wave of his hand. "Take him away. Lock him up until I decide what to do with him." As guards dragged Elias out of the room, he allowed himself a small smile. He had done what he could. Whether it made a difference or not, he didn't know. But at least he had tried. Back on Earth, the resistance movement gained momentum. Inspired by Jacob's speech, ordinary citizens began organizing themselves into groups dedicated to defending the planet. They trained in secret, learning combat skills and building makeshift weapons. Even those who disagreed with violence found ways to contribute, spreading propaganda or hacking Krylosian communications. Jacob and his team became symbols of hope, their story spreading across the globe. People admired their bravery, seeing them as heroes who had defied impossible odds. But fame came with challenges. Trust was hard to earn, especially among those who still feared the Council's influence. Not everyone believed Jacob's intentions were pure. Some accused him of seeking glory, while others worried he was leading them into disaster. To counter these doubts, Jacob worked tirelessly to unite the fractured groups under a single banner, the Earth Resistance. With Samantha's help, he reached out to leaders of various factions, convincing them to set aside their differences. It wasn't easy. Old rivalries and grudges often got in the way, but Jacob refused to give up. Slowly but surely, alliances began to form. One key ally was Lila Monroe, a traitor known for her connections throughout the galaxy. Lila operated on the fringes of society, smuggling goods and information between worlds. She wasn't interested in politics or ideals, but she hated the Krylosians more than anyone else. When Jacob approached her with an offer to join the resistance, she agreed without hesitation. "You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours," Lila said with a sly grin. "Just don't expect me to play nice." Her network proved invaluable. Through her contacts, the resistance gained access to advanced technology and intelligence about the Krylosian fleet. Lila also introduced them to other neutral factions, including rogue colonies and independent traders who shared their disdain for the Empire. Together, they formed a loose coalition, united by a common goal: stopping the Krylosians. With their new allies in place, the resistance began planning their next move. Samantha spent hours analyzing the data they had stolen from the Eclipse Blade, piecing together the Empire's strategy. What she discovered was alarming. The Krylosians weren't just after Earth's technology, they were experimenting with genetic engineering, using samples taken from captured humans to enhance their soldiers. If successful, this could give them an unstoppable advantage. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Samantha said during a meeting with the team. "Their central command hub. That's where they're running these experiments. Take it out and we cripple their entire operation." Maria frowned. "That's easier said than done. Their hub is located in the heart of their territory, surrounded by heavy defenses. Getting in will be nearly impossible." "Not if we use stealth," Ethan chimed in. "We sneak in, plant explosives, and get out before anyone knows we're there. Simple." "It's risky," Jacob admitted, "but it's our best shot." Preparations for the mission began immediately. Using blueprints provided by Lila, Maria modified the Phoenix Dawn to include additional cloaking capabilities and reinforced shields. Ethan fine-tuned the ship's engines, ensuring it could outrun any pursuers. Meanwhile, Jacob coordinated with their allies, gathering volunteers willing to risk their lives for the cause. Among the volunteers was Elias Drake. After escaping imprisonment with Lila's help, he had fled to Earth, seeking refuge with the resistance. At first, many were hesitant to trust him. But when he offered to share critical intel about the Krylosian fleet, they reluctantly accepted his aid. "I owe you all an apology," Elias said during his first meeting with the team. "I made mistakes, big ones, but I want to make things right." Jacob studied him carefully before nodding. "We could use someone like you. Just remember, one wrong move and you're out." Elias understood. He didn't expect forgiveness, not after everything he'd done, but he was determined to prove himself. As the resistance finalized their plans, he threw himself into the preparations, working alongside Maria and Ethan to ensure the mission's success. Finally, the day arrived. The Phoenix Dawn lifted off once again, carrying a small strike team, deep into enemy territory. Among them were Jacob, Claire, Samantha, Maria, Ethan, and Elias. Each carried a piece of the plan, knowing failure wasn't an option. Ahead of them lay the Krylosian stronghold, their ultimate test. As they approached the fortress-like structure cloaked in shadow, Jacob glanced at his teammates. They were scared, but resolute. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. Earth had opened its doors, stepping out of isolation to face the galaxy head-on. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Jacob Hayes paced back and forth in the dimly lit room, his mind racing. The signal from Claire's homing beacon was faint, but steady, giving them hope that she was still alive. Samantha Reed sat at a table nearby, poring over maps of the galaxy and charts of Krylosian territories. Her sharp eyes scanned every detail, looking for patterns or weaknesses they could exploit. "We need more than just a plan," Jacob said finally, breaking the silence. "We need people. People who know how to fight, how to survive out there." Samantha nodded without looking up. "I've been thinking about that. There are others like us, people who don't trust the Council's way of doing things. Some of them might be willing to help." Jacob stopped pacing and looked at her. "You mean rebels?" "Call it what you want," Samantha replied with a shrug. "They're not fans of sitting around while the galaxy burns. If we play our cards right, we can get them on board." It didn't take long for Samantha to reach out to her contacts. One by one, they began arriving at the safe house, a small, unassuming building hidden in the outskirts of the city. Among them was Ethan Cole, a pilot with a reputation for pulling off impossible maneuvers. His ship, an old model called the Wanderer, had seen better days. But Ethan knew how to make it fly like new. He was cocky, sure, but his skills were unmatched. Then there was Maria Lopez, a brilliant engineer who could fix anything with enough time and scrap metal. She had spent years working on Earth's orbital stations before quitting to go freelance. Her knowledge of ships and technology made her invaluable to the team. Quiet and soft-spoken, Maria preferred to let her work speak for itself. As the group gathered, Jacob explained the situation. He didn't sugarcoat it. He told them everything. The breach of the veil, the attack on Horizon 7, Claire's capture, and the Krylosians' demands. When he finished, the room fell silent. Everyone knew the risks involved. Crossing the veil meant breaking one of Earth's most sacred laws. If they were caught, they wouldn't just be labeled traitors. They'd be hunted down. But no one backed out. Instead, they rolled up their sleeves and got to work. The first step was finding a ship capable of making the journey. None of them had access to military-grade vessels, so they turned to the next best thing, a retired transport ship called the Phoenix Dawn. It was old, battered, and barely functional, but it was all they had. Maria took charge of retrofitting the Phoenix Dawn. With Ethan's help, she stripped away unnecessary parts and replaced them with scavenged upgrades. They added extra shielding, reinforced the engines, and even managed to install a rudimentary cloaking device. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. While Maria and Ethan worked on the ship, Jacob and Samantha focused on gathering intelligence. Using stolen data and intercepted transmissions, they pieced together information about the Krylosian fleet. They learned that the Eclipse Blade was heading toward a heavily fortified region of space controlled by the Empire. If they wanted to rescue Claire, they'd have to navigate through enemy territory undetected. The days passed quickly as the team prepared for their mission. Tensions ran high, but there was also a sense of camaraderie among them. For the first time in years, Jacob felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. These people weren't just allies. They were friends, united by a common goal. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Elias Drake was dealing with his own problems. After smuggling Claire into the escape pod, he had returned to his duties. Aboard the Eclipse Blade, trying to act as if nothing unusual had happened. But secrets had a way of surfacing, especially in the tightly controlled environment of a military ship. Chancellor Varnock grew suspicious when he received reports that the lead scientist had escaped. Furious, he demanded answers from Elias. "How did this happen?" Varnock barked during a private transmission. "You assured me the prisoners were secure." "I don't know, Chancellor." Elias lied, keeping his voice steady. "It must have been an oversight. I'll find whoever is responsible." Varnock glared at him through the screen. "See that you do. Failure will not be tolerated." When the transmission ended, Elias exhaled sharply. He knew he couldn't keep up the charade forever. Sooner or later, someone would discover what he had done, and when that happened, he'd be branded a traitor. Still, he didn't regret helping Claire. Deep down, he believed it was the right thing to do, even if it cost him everything. Back. On Earth, public outrage over the breach of the veil reached a boiling point. Protests erupted in cities across the planet, with crowds chanting slogans like "Open the doors" and "No more hiding." The United Earth Council struggled to maintain order, issuing statements meant to reassure the population. But their words rang hollow. People wanted action, not promises. In response, the Council authorized a limited counteroffensive against the Krylosians. A small fleet of ships was dispatched to patrol near the Veil, ready to intercept any further incursions. However, these efforts were largely symbolic. The Council still refused to engage directly with the Empire, leaving Jacob and his team to handle the real fight. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The Phoenix Dawn stood ready on the launch pad, its patched-up hull gleaming under the artificial lights. Jacob, Samantha, Ethan, and Maria climbed aboard, each carrying their own hopes and fears. As the engines roared to life, Jacob glanced out the viewport at Earth one last time. He didn't know if he'd ever see it again, but he pushed the thought aside. Right now, his only focus was Claire. Crossing the Veil was easier than expected. Thanks to the cloaking device, the Phoenix Dawn slipped through the barrier unnoticed. Once on the other side, the team activated their sensors, scanning for signs of the Eclipse blade. It didn't take long to locate the Krylosian flagship. It was moving steadily toward the heart of the Empire, surrounded by smaller escort vessels. "We're going to need a distraction," Samantha said, studying the readings. "Something big enough to draw their attention away from the main ship." Ethan grinned. "Leave that to me. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve." Using his piloting skills, Ethan maneuvered the Phoenix Dawn close to one of the escort ships. Then, with precise timing, he fired a series of decoy missiles. The explosions lit up the darkness of space, causing chaos among the Krylosian fleet. While the escort scrambled to investigate, the Phoenix Dawn slipped past unnoticed, heading straight for the Eclipse blade. Inside the Krylosian flagship, alarms blared as crew members rushed to respond to the attack. Elias watched from the bridge, his stomach sinking as he realized what was happening. Someone was targeting the fleet, and they were good. Too good. Could it be Earth's resistance? Or worse, had Claire somehow sent reinforcements? Before he could dwell on the possibility, another alarm sounded. This time, it was coming from within the ship itself. Intruder alerts flashed across the screens, indicating that unauthorized personnel had boarded the vessel. Elias cursed under his breath. Whoever these intruders were, they were bold and dangerous. Jacob led the team through the narrow corridors of the Eclipse blade, moving quickly and quietly. Their goal was simple: find Claire and get out alive. But navigating a hostile ship filled with armed soldiers wasn't easy. Every corner they turned brought the risk of discovery. At one point, they narrowly avoided a patrol by ducking into a storage compartment. Maria held her breath as the footsteps echoed outside, clutching a makeshift weapon in case they were spotted. When the coast was clear, they continued onward, following the map Samantha had created using the ship's internal layout. Finally, they reached the holding area where Claire was being kept. Jacob's heart pounded as he peered through the doorway, searching for any sign of her. Then he saw her, pale and exhausted but alive. Relief flooded through him as he stepped inside. "Claire," he whispered, rushing to her side. She looked up, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Jacob, what are you doing here?" "No time to explain," he said, unlocking her cell. "We need to move, now." Claire didn't argue. She grabbed his hand, and together they rejoined the others. As they made their way back to the docking bay, they encountered resistance. Krylosian soldiers blocked their path, forcing them to fight their way through. Maria used her engineering skills to disable security systems, while Ethan covered their retreat with bursts of gunfire. Just when it seemed like they might actually make it, Elias appeared in their path. For a moment, everyone froze. Jacob raised his weapon, unsure whether to shoot or surrender, but then Elias lowered his own gun and stepped aside. "Go," he said simply. "Before they catch you?" Jacob hesitated, confused but grateful. "Why? Are you helping us?" "Because I'm tired of following orders that hurt innocent people," Elias replied. "Now go. I'll hold them off." With no time to waste, Jacob and the others hurried toward the Phoenix Dawn. Behind them, Elias faced the approaching Krylosian forces alone, buying them precious seconds to escape. By the time the soldiers overwhelmed him, the Phoenix Dawn was already speeding away, its engines blazing a trail through the stars. As they crossed the veil once more, the team allowed themselves a moment of relief. Claire was safe, and they had dealt a blow to the Krylosians. But they knew the fight wasn't over. Earth's isolation had ended, and the galaxy was watching. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it together, or not at all. The breach of the veil was silent, almost invisible to the naked eye. The eclipse blade slipped through the gap in the energy barrier like a shadow moving across the night. Below them, Earth spun quietly, unaware of the danger lurking above. Captain Elias Drake stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the blue-green orb below. His hands gripped the railing tightly, knuckles white from the pressure. He told himself this was just another mission, but deep down he knew it wasn't. This was different. This was Earth, a planet that had chosen peace over conflict, isolation, over domination, and now he was violating that choice. "Sir," one of his officers called out, breaking the silence. "We've located the target." Elias turned to face the crew member, forcing himself to focus. "Good. Prepare the boarding teams. We move quickly and quietly. No unnecessary casualties." The target was an orbital station called Horizon 7, a remote facility used for classified research projects. It was small, unmanned except for a handful of scientists working on cutting-edge technology. The Krylosians had been monitoring Horizon 7 for months, gathering intelligence about its purpose. They weren't sure exactly what secrets it held, but they knew it was valuable. That was enough for Chancellor Varnock. As the Eclipse blade approached the station, Elias couldn't help but feel uneasy. He glanced at the viewscreen again, watching as Horizon 7 grew larger. It looked harmless, a cluster of metallic structures connected by narrow walkways, floating silently in space. But looks could be deceiving. Elias reminded himself why they were here: to protect the Empire, to keep it strong. Still, the weight of what they were about to do pressed heavily on him. Minutes later, the assault began. The Krylosian soldiers moved with precision, storming the station in full tactical gear. Inside, the scientists barely had time to react. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the corridors, but it was too late. The invaders overwhelmed the small security team stationed there, capturing everyone inside without much resistance. Among the prisoners was Claire Mitchell, a scientist whose work on quantum communications had caught the Krylosians' attention. Claire didn't fight back when they grabbed her. She knew it wouldn't do any good. Instead, she focused on staying calm, trying to piece together what was happening. Her mind raced as she was led to a holding area with the other captives. Who were these people? What did they want? And how? Had they gotten past the veil? None of it made sense. Back on Earth, Jacob Hayes had no idea his wife was in danger. He was giving a lecture at the Global Institute of History when the news broke. A sudden alert interrupted his presentation, displaying a live feed of the attack on Horizon 7. At first, Jacob thought it was some kind of simulation, a training exercise gone wrong. But then he saw the insignia on the attackers' uniforms, the emblem of the Krylosian Empire. His heart sank. The veil had been breached. All the fears he'd voiced to Claire came rushing back. He stumbled away from the podium, ignoring the murmurs of confusion from the audience. Pulling out his communicator, he tried reaching Claire, but there was no answer. Panic set in as he realized something terrible must have happened. Desperate for answers, Jacob reached out to Samantha Reed, a former intelligence operative who now worked as a freelance investigator. Samantha was skeptical at first. She hadn't seen Jacob in years, but when he explained the situation, she agreed to help. Together, they accessed classified reports about the attack, piecing together fragments of information. It didn't take long for them to discover that Claire was among the captured scientists. "This is bad," Samantha said, shaking her head. "Really bad. If the Krylosians are after your wife's research, we're looking at more than just a raid. They're planning something big." Jacob clenched his fists. "I don't care what they're planning. I just need to get Claire back." Samantha nodded. "Then we'll need a plan, and fast. You can't go charging in blind. These guys don't mess around." While Jacob and Samantha worked on uncovering details about the attack, tensions on Earth began to rise. News of the breach spread quickly, sparking outrage among the population. People gathered in the streets, demanding answers from the United Earth Council. How had the Krylosians managed to break through the veil? Why hadn't anyone seen this coming? The Council issued statements promising swift action, but their words did little to ease the growing fear. Behind closed doors, Council members debated their next move. Some argued for immediate retaliation, while others urged caution. "We can't. Just throw open the veil and start a war," one counselor insisted. "That's exactly what the Krylosians want." "But if we do nothing, they'll think we're weak," another shot back. "They'll keep pushing until they get what they want." In the end, the council decided to send a diplomatic message to the Krylosian Empire, demanding the release of the captured scientists. It was a hollow gesture, and everyone knew it. The Krylosians wouldn't listen. They never did. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse Blade, Elias Drake struggled with his conscience. The initial success of the mission had given way to a gnawing sense of guilt. Watching the prisoners huddled together, frightened and confused, made him question everything he believed in. Were they really the enemy? Or were they just victims of Chancellor Varnock's ambition? Things got worse when Varnock contacted the ship directly. His voice crackled over the comm system, cold and commanding. "Report, Captain Drake. Have you secured the data?" "Yes, Chancellor," Elias replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "But there's an issue." "What kind of issue?" Varnock snapped. "The scientists refuse to cooperate. Without their help, decoding the data will take longer than expected." There was a pause before Varnock spoke again. "Then eliminate them. Start with the lead researcher. Make an example of her." Elias froze. "Chancellor, That's an order, Captain. Do not fail me." The transmission ended, leaving Elias reeling. He stared at the screen, horror creeping into his chest. Eliminate them? Just like that? He couldn't bring himself to follow such a brutal command. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, Elias made a decision that would change everything. Under cover of darkness, he sneaked into the holding area where the prisoners were being kept. Claire looked up as he entered, her eyes wide with fear. "Who are you?" she whispered. I'm here to help, Elias said softly. You need to trust me. He unlocked her cell and handed her a small device. This is a homing beacon. Activate it once you're clear of the ship. Someone will find you. Claire hesitated, unsure whether to believe him. But she didn't have time to argue. Nodding quickly, she took the device and slipped out of the room. Elias watched her go, knowing he had just crossed a line he could never uncross. Hours later, Claire found herself drifting aimlessly in an escape pod, clutching the homing beacon tightly. She activated it as instructed, sending out a signal into the void. Back on Earth, Jacob and Samantha picked up the transmission almost immediately. Relief washed over Jacob as he realized Claire was still alive. "We're coming for you," he whispered, even though he knew she couldn't hear him. With renewed determination, Jacob and Samantha began assembling a team to rescue Claire and stop the Krylosians before it was too late. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew they couldn't give up. Earth had shut its doors once, hoping to avoid conflict. Now those doors were wide open, and the consequences would ripple across the galaxy for years to come. The year was 2147, and Earth had done something no one thought possible. After centuries of being pushed around by alien empires, humanity decided to shut itself off from the rest of the galaxy. It wasn't a quiet decision or a small step. It was a bold move that changed everything. The United Earth Council, the group of leaders who made decisions for all of humanity, announced that Earth would no longer be part of interstellar politics. They built something called the Veil, an energy barrier that surrounded the planet like a glowing shield. No ship could come in, and no ship could go out. Humanity had locked itself away. For many, this choice felt right. People were tired of wars and invasions. They were tired of other species treating Earth like it was nothing more than a resource to be used up. But not everyone agreed with the decision. Jacob Hayes, a historian who studied how different civilizations interacted, was one of those people. He didn't think shutting Earth off from the galaxy was the answer. He believed it was only a matter of time before someone got angry enough to try breaking through the veil. Jacob often talked about his concerns with his wife, Claire Mitchell. She worked as a scientist, studying quantum communications, which was a fancy way of saying she figured out how to send messages across huge distances instantly. Claire understood Jacob's worries, but she also knew why the veil was important. Every day she saw reports of failed experiments and dangerous technologies that could have been stolen if Earth hadn't closed its borders. Still, there was a part of her that shared Jacob's unease. What if their isolation wasn't as safe as they thought? Far away from Earth, in a distant corner of the galaxy, things weren't going well either. The Krylosian Empire, a powerful coalition of star systems ruled by Chancellor Varnock, was growing restless. For years, they had tried to negotiate with Earth, hoping to gain access to its advanced technology. But Earth's refusal to cooperate left them bitter. Varnock, a tall and imposing figure with cold eyes, saw Earth's isolation as a personal insult. He believed humanity was mocking him, daring him to do something about it. Varnock's advisors warned him against taking action. "Earth has sealed itself off," one of them said during a meeting in the Imperial Palace. "Their veil is impenetrable. Attacking them would be suicide." But Varnock wasn't listening. His pride wouldn't let him back down. Instead, he turned to Captain Elias Drake, a trusted officer in the Krylosian military. Drake was known for his tactical brilliance and loyalty to the Empire. Varnock gave him a secret mission: find a way to breach the veil and bring back whatever valuable technology Earth was hiding. Elias accepted the mission, though he wasn't entirely comfortable with it. He had spent years serving the Empire, following orders without question. But this time was different. Something about attacking Earth felt wrong. Maybe it was because he had heard stories about the planet, how beautiful it was, how resilient its people were. Or maybe it was just the weight, of knowing that breaking through the veil would start a war Earth wasn't prepared for. Whatever the reason, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into trouble. Back on Earth, life went on as usual. Most people didn't think much about the veil anymore. To them, it was just a fact of life, like the sun rising every morning. Jacob, however, couldn't stop thinking about it. One evening, while sitting at home with Claire, he brought up the topic again. "What happens if someone finds a way to break through?" he asked. "We've put all our faith in this barrier, but what if it fails?" Claire sighed. She had heard this argument before. "It won't fail," she said firmly. "The veil is the strongest defense we've ever built. Even the Krylosians can't get past it." "But what if they do?" Jacob pressed. "What if they find a weakness? We're sitting ducks here, Claire. If they attack, we won't stand a chance." Claire didn't respond right away. She knew Jacob was right, at least in part. Earth had become complacent behind the veil. People assumed they were safe, but safety was never guaranteed. Finally, she said, "If they do find a way to break through, then we'll deal with it. Until then, we have to trust that the veil will hold." Her words didn't reassure Jacob. He wanted to believe in the veil, but deep down he knew it wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. Meanwhile, light years away, Elias Drake and his crew were preparing for their mission, their flagship. The Eclipse Blade was one of the fastest ships in the Krylosian fleet. Equipped with cutting-edge weapons and stealth technology, it was designed to strike quickly and disappear before anyone noticed. For weeks, Elias and his team studied data stolen from rogue traders who claimed to know how the veil worked. Using this information, they developed a prototype device capable of disrupting the barrier temporarily. The night they launched their attack, the tension aboard the Eclipse Blade was palpable. Everyone knew the risks involved. If they succeeded, they would make history. If they failed, they would likely die. As the ship approached the veil, Elias stared at the shimmering wall of energy through the viewport. It was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. For a moment, he wondered if they were making a mistake. Then he reminded himself of his duty, to the Empire, to his crew, and to Chancellor Varnock. "Activate the disruptor," Elias ordered. A low hum filled the ship as the device powered up. Moments later, the veil began to flicker. Tiny cracks appeared in its surface, spreading outward like ripples on water. Then, with a flash of light, the barrier collapsed, leaving a gaping hole large enough for the Eclipse Blade to pass through. "We're in," someone whispered. Elias nodded, though his stomach churned with unease. They had breached the veil, but now came the hard part. Ahead of them lay Earth, unprotected and unaware of the danger heading its way. As the Eclipse Blade entered orbit, Elias scanned the planet below. It looked peaceful, almost serene. Cities glowed softly in the darkness, and oceans sparkled under the moonlight. For a brief moment, Elias forgot why he was there. He forgot about the mission, about the Empire, about everything. All he could think about was how beautiful Earth was. Then reality snapped back into focus. This wasn't a sightseeing trip. They were here to take what they needed and leave. With a heavy heart, Elias gave the order to begin the operation. Unbeknownst to him, his actions would set off a chain reaction that neither he nor anyone else could have predicted. Earth's days of isolation were over, and the consequences would ripple across the galaxy for years to come.